everybody.
Welcome, everyone. I see Carol up there now. Welcome, everyone, to the November 30th meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. Tonight in attendance, we have members Ron Allard, Buddy Hackett, Jeff Brand, myself, James Jennison, Donna Masucci, Code Enforcement Officer John Huckins, Land Use Administrative Assistant Barbara Irvine, Town Administrator Conor McIver, and joining us remotely, we have Steve Diamond and Carol Ogilvy. All right. And first on the agenda is review of the minutes. Anybody have any comments, changes, questions? Hearing none.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the Tuesday, November 16th as
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand.
date. Right? No. Date.
16th, yep. And seconded by Ron Allard. Buddy Hackett.
Aye.
Ron Allard.
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond.
Diamond, aye.
Jeff Brand.
Ran I.
James Jennison, aye. Donna Masucci.
Aye.
Minutes are accepted as written. Next up, we have zoning ordinances. I think we can move through many of them very quickly. Starting with the first one, Article 2. Amendment 1 of the Barrington zoning ordinance. Read up. Do you have any issues with the way the first one is written?
I do.
Hearing nothing, a motion to move Article 2,
Actually,
Amendment number 1.
on that lot 50, I mean, tax map 57, that was the one that was two different lots. One was behind the subdivision. This thing turns off. Andy had pointed out, there's one here that's behind the subdivision,
Yep,
and then Jim Connick's lot here.
right.
So I talked to Jim Connick, he would like to keep it as commercial. He said that when he bought it for that reason. And I got the subdivision plan here. And as you can see in the subdivision plan, Jim Connick's land is all of this out here. So the nearest houses, this is part of the open space. This is all open space, and so isn't this. So this, none of that will be close to any houses if it stays commercial. So I contacted the guy for the one behind it, which was this one here, and it makes no sense. It was even in the regional commercial. It's so far back up in the woods. I talked to Mr. Mr. LaFrance. And when I saw the AK, I thought it was Arkansas, so I waited till 9 o'clock, and it's Alaska. And when I started explaining to him why I called, he says, "You realize it's 5 o'clock in the morning and you woke me up?" I mean, so anyways, he thought that it was residential already. So he has no issue with making it residential to be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So with that said, we would be adding tax map 22325. Oh, actually, it would have been on the next one.
Yeah, I was going to.
Sorry.
Next one.
All right, yeah, so it'd be the next one, so you'd be doing 24, 25, and 26. I'm sorry, for some reason, I thought it was on that other tax map.
Well, that's all right. Well, we'll roll through them both then, because it's both explained. So the first one, Article 2, Amendment 1, there's no objections. A motion to move that forward.
I make a motion to move Amendment 1 to Article 2 forward to public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard. Donna Masucci,
Suchi, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye. Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond, aye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of moving it forward. Amendment number 2, which John just explained. Any discussion on that?
Something I.
So we're gonna make, I'm just gonna say
Anybody over?
tax map 223 lots 24, 25 and 26.
Correct. Correct.
Did you get that, Carol? Yeah, she's shaking it up and down.
Okay,
Any other comments?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Motion to move that forward.
okay. I make a motion to move amendment 2 to article 2 forward with the addition of lot 25 to 23.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye. Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond eye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of moving that forward. Number 3, proposed by the planning board, zoning map change, tax 250, map 251, lot 64 and 65 from general residential to regional commercial. Those are the ones,
Lindsay's gravel.
Lindsay's gravel pit. Any discussion on those? Motion to move.
I make a motion to move amendment 3 to article 2 forward to public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond nay.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. 5 in favor, 1 against to move it forward. Amendment number 4. Planning board to amend section 2.1.1 as follows. Should any of the 3 amendments proposed above pass that change the date of the zoning map from March 8th, 2005 to March 8th, 2022, and modify the last sentence to read, a reproduction of this map is contained in the appendix of this ordinance and available on the town's website. Any discussion on that one?
Just a one word though, it's, should any of the 3 amendments proposed above, aren't there 4 amendments? Or the 3 above the number 4?
It's the 3 above number 4.
Right.
Nothing? We good?
I'm good.
All right, I make a motion to move amendment 4 to article 2 forward hearing.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond eye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of moving amendment 4 forward. Amendment 5. The Barrington zoning ordinance as proposed by the planning board to amend table 2 by adding a new footnote 1 to regional commercial as follows. 1, on other than state roads, e.g. routes 4 and 125, the minimum front setback is 40 feet. Any discussion?
Yep, that shouldn't be EG, which means, for example, it should be IE. We decided after discussion, it's only routes 4 and 125 that we were talking about, correct, John?
Correct. That's the only place
It
that
should
should
be
show
I,
commercial exit.
not EG.
Any other discussion?
All right, I make a motion to move amendment 5 to article 2 forward for public hearing with the one minor change from EG to IE.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond eye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of moving amendment 5 forward. Amendment 6. Amend section 622, parents 3 as follows. The total amount of open space that is identified as open water, wetland soils, exposed ledge, or other terrain conditions that would normally be considered otherwise undevelopable shall not constitute more than 50% of the area required as open space within a conservation subdivision.
Well, I think that would be appropriate, as this is the Allard Memorial Amendment, that he should make the motion.
I make a motion that we move forward amendment number 6.
I
As written.
second.
Motion by Ron Allard, second
screwed up
by
now.
Jeff Brand, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Allard, definitely aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond Eye.
Jeff Brand,
Oh, I want to say nay so badly, but I'll say aye.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of moving amendment 6 forward. Amendment number 7, proposed by the planning board to amend section 7.3 as follows. 7.3, parents 1, a home occupation shall only be conducted totally within the structure of a single-family dwelling and only by the occupants of the dwelling.
And
Any-
remember, this was to further explain the home occupation, and that's different than a home business. So a home occupation is one tier, and then a business is something else above.
Any other further discussion on this?
I just have one
James?
question for
Yep.
the word occupants. Should it be occupants or residents?
So you're thinking maybe you could have renters that would be,
I could have a bus show up every day and have 25 people get off, and if, once they're inside, they're occupants of the building, of the dwelling.
Okay, that would,
technically,
I guess residents would clarify that if that's the case. I was just thinking, it's a home occupation, we would have it as occupant, but I can see where it could be twisted into something it's not intended to be.
Carol, do you have an opinion on that?
I had never actually thought of that idea, but certainly if there's any potential that someone could try to misinterpret it, there's no harm in changing it to residents, then it's clear.
Okay. Is there a need to add the word legal resident? You know, like you have to bring your gas bill or something to be a legal resident to register your car. Do you want to be a legal resident of Barrington, or is that another word that could be stretched out that I reside there, you know?
well,
We're going for it, go for it. Is that a legal resident? That
You know, I don't
doesn't
know
hurt.
what that
doesn't
means.
hurt, might help.
Is it
I
too much or?
I mean, if they're a resident, they're living in the dwelling, right?
Right, but can you have 16 people living in a single bedroom
Maybe you can,
flat?
yeah.
On Seinfeld, they used address of yours.
That's true. All right. It is. All right.
Well, no,
Yeah.
and frankly, lived within a different culture, particularly in Asian cultures, it's not unusual, and they don't think anything about it, you know, that they have several people that are living within one bedroom.
Oh, believe me,
But there'd still be legal.
Okay,
Jeff.
they still be-
Nothing illegal about
Well,
that.
there's nothing illegal, but I'm,
well, I think
I'm
there's
saying-
occupancy standards in, isn't there?
What if there are,
Or is the number of occupants? No,
what if there's squatters on the properties? Is that,
that wouldn't be a legal resident if they're squatters.
yeah, well, I'm trying to eliminate squatters.
So if you say legal residents, that would eliminate squatters, right?
It doesn't hurt, it might help.
Okay. Any further discussion around Amendment 7 with the change of legal resident from occupants?
Sounds good to me.
You in our fashion, motion
all
to,
right, I make a motion to move Article Amendment 7 to, what article is that? To, forward for a public hearing with the change of occupants to legal residents.
Second,
motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Masucci, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Allard, aye.
Diamond,
Diamond Eye.
Jeff Brand,
Very nice.
James Jennison, aye. All in favor of Amendment 7 forward. Excuse me. Amendment number 8, Planning Board to amend section 7.3 as follows. 7.3, parents 3, no more than 500 square feet of the dwelling's net living area shall be devoted to such use. Any discussion surrounding that change? I think we hashed that one up pretty good.
I make a motion to move Amendment 4 to Article 2 forward to public hearing.
Amendment 8.
What did I say? 4. Oh, Amendment 8, excuse me.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Suchi, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron
Aye.
Diamond,
Diamond, I.
Jeff Brand,
Brian, I.
James Jennison, I. All in favor of moving Amendment 8 forward. Amendment 9, Planning Board to amend Section 7.4 as follows. 7.4, Parent 7, the home business, including storage, shall be totally conducted within the designated accessory and dwelling structures, but may occupy an area outside said structure if this area is adequately screened with fencing or a vegetative buffer. In no case shall the activities of home business, both inside and outside the accessory and dwelling structures occupy more than 2,000 square feet or cover more than 10% of the lot, whichever is less.
And again, we hashed this out, I think, the last time pretty extensively because because of issues that have come up that people weren't including storage, so they infinite storage. Turning 500 square feet, and what that means with respect to small. So I'm satisfied with here after we, like I said, we hashed this out extensively last time.
Anybody further objection? All right, a motion to move it forward.
All right, I make a motion to move amendment number 9 to Article 2 forward to public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Brand, second by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci,
Suchi, aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Allard, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond, I.
Jeff Brand,
Brian, I.
James Jennison, I. All in favor of moving Amendment 9 forward. Number 10, the Planning Board to amend Section 9.5.1, Parents 5 as follows. This ordinance shall not prohibit the construction of principal and accessory structures within the buffer zone on lots that legally existed on or before March 13th, 2001. Further discussion around that?
Well, it was discussed. I think this is something I'm not in favor of. As Carol said, the most common practice is when these things roll into be enforced on all lots. We exempted, lots that were improved. We exempted lots that were unimproved, so they wouldn't take away building lots. To me, houses that are improved already by definition are building lots. So we're not taking away anything from them. So I don't think we should extend this to improve lots, this exemption to improve lots.
I can't understand why you would take away from a lot that hasn't been built, but you take away from a lot that has been built and you give someone a right to build something on, but not someone else. So
If I was around when they first get the exemption to unimproved lots, I would have said no to that. So I'm against.
Well, yeah, the difference being you've already built, if it's already been improved, so you made use of the lot. Whereas on an unimproved lot, by imposing new standards after the board's approved it, you could render the lot unusable.
Unbuildable.
But you've taken away their potential that they purchased at the time. And like you said, I
Right.
think we've fully hashed this out.
So I agree on unimproved lots that have been improved, then, they go forward. However, I also have listened to Ron, listened to Steve, and I'm a little bit concerned about getting carte blanche once the lot has been developed, that further development is going to encroach into the buffer zone. So I'm on the fence on this one.
I think it sends a bad message that we don't care about the buffer zone.
Well, this was,
I think a message we don't care about the wetlands that much.
yeah, this rule went retroactive
Things like that.
on 3 buffers.
Pardon?
This rule went retroactive on lots that were approved before there was a buffer.
And it could have been, as Carol pointed out, the more common practice is to oppose it on all lots. We didn't do that because we want to make some lots unbuildable.
I think what Carol said, and we can have her repeat it, she said typically what you see is any lot that didn't have it on it was allowed to continue with not having the buffer, and the buffer would start from then
That's not what I
forward.
heard. That's not what I heard, John.
Okay, well, let Carol explain.
Yeah, I think you.
Carol, can you
Right.
explain?
Yes, typically, this, not unlike many other zoning ordinances, from the date that passes, anything that's existing is grandfathered. But that doesn't mean, in this case, that a future ability to construct something in a buffer or too close to the wetland, that would be allowed. They would be allowed to keep what they have. And if that meant that they couldn't expand without getting into the wetland, well, that's the way most of these ordinances are written. If you're already in violation, if the buffer goes in, you're not going to be penalized for that, but you can't expand upon that violation or create a new violation. You have to comply for anything different that you do. You've got to comply with the ordinance going forward.
So you can be in non-compliance, but, and that's okay if that
Yes.
condition exists at the time of the
Yes,
change, but you aren't allowed to do something more non-compliant.
Well,
correct.
she said that, what I heard you say was, when the rule changed, the existing lots were grandfathered.
Yes, for exactly what they have at that time. If they're in violation now, then that's grandfathered, but they can't create a new violation. They're not protected from anything going forward, any new development that they might want to
Right, when
do.
you say grandfathered, you're not saying they are exempt for all time from the new.
No,
It's, what you're saying is they're grandfathered in the sense that if they are in non-compliance with the new zoning ordinance change, then they are allowed to exist. But
yes,
they aren't exempt from application of that should there be further expansion in the future.
correct.
Okay, and if we interpret that way, it's going to be in direct conflict with 9.5.1 parentheses 1, where they did the 35 setback, where they grandfathered the lots between 97 and 2001 to just having the 35-foot setback. So if they got a 35-foot setback that they can go into and that's grandfathered, that means they're well within the 50-foot buffer. And they're allowed to continue staying in that 35-foot setback, the way I read it. So if you're gonna make it so that all lots that, let's say a house was built last year and they come in and want to put their garage on this year, you're saying, no, the buffer applies, but it didn't apply last year. I think you need to fix that other one on the setbacks too, to make everything stay conforming.
And I'd like to address, I think there's a level of hypocrisy here. If you're gonna say an unimproved lot is still buildable, say that the only place to put the house is in a buffer. What's the difference between an unimproved lot, building a house in the buffer, or me adding a garage in the buffer if I'm grandfathered?
I wouldn't have given it to an unimproved lot. So I'm not there. So to me, the exemption that gave it to the unimproved lots in the first place, I wouldn't have said yes to that. So I don't think it should be given to them. And I don't think it should be given to lots that have a building on them already. So I'm kind of,
And
I
then,
think I would be Steve in the original vote, but that's happened. I'm
yeah,
not gonna take it away, but I'm not gonna grant this exemption to improve. They're not unbuildable because they have a building on them already. So
I take issue with that. If it was your property, you'd have probably a completely different opinion of that. If they,
when I did my,
so many examples, but not only beyond that is, what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought.
well, let me respond to that. I mean,
Yeah.
new setbacks come in, you have to meet those. Right?
No, your grandfather.
If a setbacks, there's all kinds of new things that come in, state or whatever, from the lake, that came in after my house was put in. I don't abide by those.
I would say state ones, sure, that's,
So,
Even the town ones.
yeah, so,
Existing lots of record have the same setback as new lots do.
yeah, so I couldn't go close to the lake, then I could have, when I first, when the house was first built, I could have gone close, but I can't now. So I am restricted by new regulations that come in.
and that was the other thing I was gonna say. There's been instances where buffers are arbitrary. There's not a hard science on buffers. I mean, if we get an amendment passed next year, someone writes up a petition to pass an amendment that they want 100-foot buffers, that's an arbitrary number that they're just making up. And it's a taking in land, and you may agree with that.
But it's gotta be approved with the town. So I can't arbitrarily do anything and enforce on everybody.
Like last year, if you get a petition and you get people to sign it, that goes into effect until the vote. right? So there's a taking of people's property. It could be a ludicrous number, but depending on which way you sway, you may think that's a great, and nobody can build anything anywhere close. And we're talking about buffers, we're not talking about wetlands. And so I think the buffer is a gray area, if you will, that I think it's a step too far for me, but.
Well, I mean.
Excuse me, Jamie.
I'm sorry,
Jamie.
Steve. Go.
So as far as it being an arbitrary number, this is a few years ago, so maybe you're not remembering it, but there was the UNH researchers who put out this document on what amount of buffer was necessary, and they weighed a whole bunch of factors. I could dig out the file if you'd like. I could read some of it to you, but basically that number is not arbitrary. There's good reasons for it. And, as you might recall, I did petition to increase the wetland buffers, which did not go through, but, there is notable support in town for that. I mean, I can't remember the exact number, but it was close to the 50 to get that to pass. So the point is, it's not just something made up in someone's head. There's a lot of thought and science that goes into these policies.
And to me, the thing to me, Jamie, that's important to remember is we're not taking anything away from the improved lots. We're just not granting them the exemption the unimproved lots got. So this is not a taking. We're not giving.
Yeah, these exist today.
Yes, they don't have the ability now.
You're giving
You're
people.
giving something, you're not taking it away.
Wow, the way you just rephrased that, once a house gets put on it, it's considered a developed lot, which is not how it's been applied. So if a guy comes in and he builds just a house this year and he plans on building the garage next year, and he builds the house and that garage is going to be in the buffer, I could give him the permit to build the garage with the house. But next year I couldn't give him the permit to build the garage because now it's a developed lot, the way that you just said it, which was a little different than how it was worded before, where the improved lots was at the time of subdivision is what it actually said before. So now you're just saying any improved lots, that changes the whole dynamics of this considerably.
I am just not accepting the new exemption. But to your point, Jamie, let's say I was subdivided after March 13th, 2001. I can't do, I might have been subdivided a few days later. I'm not allowed to do something that my next door neighbor's allowed to do because he subdivided a few days before. So,
That's a subdivision though. I think that's when I separate those things. If you were gonna take your lot
let's say
into two,
let's say the lot was created March 12th and mine is created on March 20th. I am not allowed to, my next door neighbor can do things I can't do.
right, because that's a creation date. The day you were born, it's your birthday. You can't be born 2 months earlier. My lot, my house was created when it was created. I should be benefit.
To your point, March 13th is pretty arbitrary as well.
Is it
So-
though?
Well, it was the voting day. That's the reason why that date's in there.
It's just
It was the date the ordinance got it.
But you could also go back and say, a variance and say that.
You can ask for his variance.
My,
Well, actually, it's a 9-6 because it's not a variance. It's from the planning board.
Okay. So, I mean, we don't need to agree.
So, yeah, right. So what's the new? What's new about the change?
It takes out unimproved lots and
Right.
includes all lots. It gives the exemption to all lots created before March 13th, not just unimproved lots.
that's what it says now, though.
That's how it is now, but it just clarifies the language, right?
Yeah, well, no.
No.
No,
This will-
no. If you read, you got your zoning with you?
Yeah.
So everybody open that 9.5.
I've got it.
And what,
That was the one where
It's 9.
Honor had proposed to change it, the word to on lots that were created, so that it would be clear. And when we come back in to talk about it, I can't remember who it was. For some reason, I thought it was wrong. I could be wrong. That he said, why don't we just make it all lots before 2001, just to make it easy?
did I say that?
I think it was you, but maybe,
Say that.
It might have been me.
it might have been you. Okay.
But, and I didn't understand, and I thought the point of confusion was, or which otherwise legally existed until you explained that there were lots that had been subdivided, created, that were recorded,
That
that in
weren't approved
fact
by
were
the,
not part of a subdivision.
well, they weren't something approved by the planning board.
Right.
The subdivision.
By the planning.
Correct.
So that's what the otherwise legally existed means. And I didn't.
But if we go by what Ron was saying, all lots now go back to this thing with the buffers apply. So we're gonna have a whole bunch of,
No, he's saying if you, no, if we don't change this and leave it the way it is, then, it's on unimproved lots.
well, the reason why it came forward was because someone else disagrees with the interpretation that me and my two predecessors have, and we were trying to, what was the word? It was on, right? You added
On or or.
On.
As it's.
Oh, right here.
Now,
to where that says or right there, if you put the word on lots, and that way
That's what I have,
it makes it clear. That's what the original one that come forward, and then you guys changed it.
right, because there was the discussion about, and this change, if as written, and that's what I wrote on mine. I have or lots. I wrote
On
it
lots.
in my,
Yeah,
on
same
my
here.
page, because that's what we were talking about. But then there was this discussion about, well, what about people on improved lots? And then, that kind of took off.
Well, we were just trying to make it as clear
Right,
as possible so that this, I interpret this way and now I interpret this way is gone. We're trying to
so,
make it so.
yeah, so I'm back to the or lots,
I'm
which
next.
clarifies it
Or
about
on
expanding.
lots.
Right, or on lots, which clarifies the article without expanding.
And it gives you the same rights that they've been getting right along. It doesn't change it. It doesn't change how it's gonna be applied at all compared to how it's been.
Wait a
applied.
second, you weren't giving this to improve lots though, right?
No,
Well, if the lot was improved at the time of subdivision,
Yeah,
was an improved lot at the time of subdivision, then
it didn't.
the buffers would still apply. Now, if it was a lot that didn't have a house on it, then
apply.
it wouldn't apply because it was on a lot. Because actually, if you read it, what it says is,
I understand, Jeff, I'm not on the improved lot. I'm not there. So that's where I
well,
disagree.
yeah, I know, and I'm not either anymore.
So,
Okay. Oh, okay.
I want to go back to just inserting on lots after or, just to clarify it for the land use office. And
Well,
I guess I've shifted over and I'm with you that I don't necessarily want to expand this to,
so it wouldn't change how it's been
nope,
applied right along. It just makes it more clear
right.
that's what it means.
if I may, Mr. Chair.
yes, please.
So how it's applied right now, based on the language as it's written, which in my personal opinion has deficiencies for being perfectly clear, is that on lots that are improved, they can expand without having restrictions of the expanded buffer. What I'm hearing from
Well-
Jeff and Ron is that what you'd like to see is a change of practice from how this provision of the zoning ordinance.
Well, I disagree with your interpretation of what this says. I do.
That's acceptable. So I guess the goal is to make it clear. And John's explained how he applies the zoning ordinance now. It sounds like there's a variety of opinions on what should be done. And that doesn't have to have any bearing on what's done now or what's written now.
Right.
You have the ability with the zoning amendment to propose anything that you.
Right.
yeah, but Connor, John, is that how you're applying it now on improved lots?
Can
Well,
I explain?
Only lots that had improvements on them at the time of
That's
subdivision.
what you said though, Connor, I heard.
It is. See,
Right.
look,
Because that,
I'll
because I just want to read this. It says,
old farmhouse was existing at time of subdivision. My house came after, so it's technically improved today, but my house is exempt from the buffers because it wasn't an improved lot at the time of subdivision. Only the old farmhouse was existing at time of subdivision. He's the only person that has to comply with the buffers. And that's why I say, well, give it to him. There's only a couple of those old houses that were left over from a subdivision, like the one we did the walk on. There's one house on there that's gonna be, if that was pre-2001. There's one house that would be restricted to buffers. All those lots that are being created would not be. It's just the existing house.
Yeah, but after you, and this is where I disagree with you, Connor, is after you make improvements on that lot, you build something there, it's no longer an unimproved lot.
oh, wait a minute.
That's the, at the.
That's how I've been applying it, because here's what it says, just so you hear it. It says, the ordinance shall not prohibit the construction of principal and accessory structures within the buffer zones on unimproved lots that were approved for subdivision by the planning board. So if the
Right.
lot was unimproved when it was approved by the planning board, then the buffers don't apply. If it had a house on it when it got its subdivision from the planning board, it does apply. That's how I've been applying it.
Yes,
And
that's how I want to continue to apply.
that makes perfect sense.
So do you agree with what I just said about the scenario I just explained?
Yeah.
Out of a
that-
10 lot subdivision,
Right.
one house has buffers, the rest do not.
If it was pre-2001.
Pre-2001 until you approve. the
No.
lot.
No, because I do it because it says at time of subdivision. So if you want to do just improved lots, get away from that thing from a time of subdivision, then it would be any lot that was, so if there's a house on it, the buffers apply no matter what.
Yeah, that's what I understand, and that's,
Okay.
No,
okay,
but that's not how it is because it says improved lots at time of subdivision. So I've had people come in and they go, do I have a buffer? So I look up their subdivision. The subdivision, let's say, was in 1987. There was no house on that lot. So, okay, buffers don't apply to you. If there was a house on that lot, then they do apply. That's how I read this and that's how it's been interpreted by me and my predecessors.
Yeah.
That's the point.
and we did remember that we didn't apply it because we didn't want to make lots unbuildable. My point is, if it's got a house on it, it's clearly buildable. So we're not taking anything away from them. We're taking away the.
But then
and-
Steve's argument was, okay, they got a building permit, they built a house on it. Do the buffers now apply after the fact?
After the fact.
So let's say the subdivision got approved in well, let's go pre the 35-foot buffer in 1996.
Mhm.
And there was no buffers.
Yep.
When they built their house, let's say they built their house in 98.
Yep.
Do buffers apply to that lot now?
Not the way it's written.
Not the way it's written. That's how I've been interpreting this. Oh, I look it up. If the house was not there at the time of the subdivision, because it says at the time of subdivision, improved at the time of the subdivision. So that's how I've been interpreting it. Now, if you wanted to be all developed lots and do away with, that was, just do away with it and just say any developed lot that was developed pre-2001, the buffers apply. I mean, if that's how you're interpreting it. So, I mean, what you're saying and what we're saying, I mean, they're still in conflict. That's
But I
where,
think you hit the very specific difference. So the folks that don't want to make sure it doesn't expand more, what's the opinion about a lot, the 96, the lot was created in 98, the house was built. If they wanted to expand today, do you, regardless of what it says now, do you think the buffer should apply or do you think the buffer shouldn't apply?
I think the buffer should apply.
Should not.
I think it should. And
I think what you said earlier about, do we care about the?
you know, and
wetlands?
John, you kind of shut me down the last time I brought this up, but in looking at what the state thinks about this, it's not directly related, but if you look at,
Steve,
you know, we've had this discussion.
I'm not.
Just a second,
Yeah.
just a second. When you look at approval of plans and when they expire and when you get an exemption after approval, it's 5 years. At the end of 5 years, the state says, okay, during your period of construction, essentially, you get to develop the site like you were approved, but after that point, nope, you're gonna have to comply with new zoning ordinances. So there's some intent there on the state that exemption doesn't last forever.
Unless you put it in your regulation that it does.
Well, I understand.
And
but
that's
I
only
was-
intended to protect developers from local
Right.
boards, not from other things. That's so if we try to change something to prevent them.
Yeah, they start building
out.
the road and we said, oh, no, we gotta build it.
Why
I
don't you do that?
understand, but it seems to me in reading that and some other exemptions that are in there, it's clear the state doesn't think about ordinance changes as something that you were forever exempt from. You don't have to take any action if you're in non-compliance. You know, if your building's already there and we make
Right.
the buffer is 200 feet and you're now in the buffer, that doesn't mean you got to tear the building down. But it doesn't mean that if you want to go forward and do anything, that you're exempt.
So then not only should you fix 9.5.1, you should also fix the 5, but 9.5.1 number 1, because there's an exemption for that 35 feet. And if you change that other one to any lot that was approved and you don't put the planning board approval pre-2001, that would be in direct conflict to number one, the 35-foot setback. So what happened is the board was trying to grandfather those lots to the 35-foot setback that was approved between that window when it was a setback. And then they tried to grandfather the ones before 2001 from the buffers. Now, if you're not going to exempt any of them or grandfather them, or however you want to look at it, then take both of them out.
Well, I see a difference between saying, okay, we expanded the buffer from 35 to 50 feet. But for you people that bought and built in that period of time, you can keep with the existing buffer at that time. That's different than saying,
No, but if they come in and ask for a building permit now,
we're just going to exempt them totally.
I know, but if they come in and ask for a building permit now, let's say that lot got approved in 1999. The way that number one is written, there's a 35-foot setback, there's no buffer to that lot. So they grandfathered the lots between 97 and 2001 to it's a 35-foot setback. There's not a 50-foot buffer.
No, wait a minute. It's 951 is exceptions for construction and wetland buffers. That's the title of that section.
But
That 35 feet is a buffer.
no,
It absolutely is.
it's a building setback.
You can't build closer than 35 feet to a wetland area. What is a buffer?
The fill extension, the buffer was no dredge, no fill. You can put the house 35 feet from the edge of it because it was a building setback. So now the buffer is no dredge, no fill. So that means the fill extensions have to be 50 feet from the wetland, which depending how the ground slopes, it could make that house 60 or 70 feet from the wetland because there's no fill that's allowed in the buffer. You can put fill in the setback line because this is the structure at 35 feet. There's a difference between a buffer and a setback.
The position of the state was brought up. I happen to have a DES document in front of me at the moment here. I'll just read one sentence from it. It says, the ability of vegetated wetland buffers to provide water quality protection increases with the size of the buffer. At 100 feet, most of the contaminants and nutrients have been removed. Protection of buffers will reduce wetland impacts by moderating the effects of stormwater runoff and doing all sorts of other good things. So that's what they're recommending, and that's sort of a moderate midline position. They're saying a lot of benefits happen at 200 or 300 feet, but to be reasonable to everyone's needs, 100 is a good compromise, and that's not even what we're considering. What we should be doing is at least making sure that the 50-foot buffers apply to everyone soon.
So that's what I'm saying. If you're going to do that, then you got to change number one.
Well, before we do that, John, I think that reinforces the position I'm talking about, which is it makes no sense to limit them to 35. They're 35 and then other properties to, unlimited. So there's clearly an attempt to give some relief.
No, there's from 97 to 2005. Before 97, there was no setback or buffer to the wetlands at all. You could build right up to the wetlands. And I have some lots that were created before 97 where they come in, they're vacant lots. They've been building right up to the edge of the wetlands because of the way this other lot was grandfathered. That's that other thing about the other lots. I've actually had some where the edge of the house is 2 feet from the wetlands that have been built in the last couple of years. Now, with that said, between 97 and 2001, there was that 35-foot setback for the building. And like I said, the fill extensions a lot of times put you right to the edge of the wetland. And I talked to guys that were on the board when this whole thing got done to the buffers. And the reason why they changed it to the buffer instead of a setback was because the fill extensions would go right up to the edge of the wetlands. And then someone moved in the house after they bought it. They didn't know that it was a wetland, so they were filling into the wetlands to make their backyard bigger. Now, if your fill extensions are 50 feet away, if they filled in 10 feet of their backyard a little more, they filled in 10 feet of the buffer, but the wetland was still protected. The buffer was intended to be a protection to the wetlands.
Yeah, but my point is, I agree they're in conflict. I agree with you there. But I think that 9.5.1, parentheses 1, clearly is an attempt to, not impose unlimited on anybody before 2001 and not to also impose 50 before 2001. So I think it's in a line with, you can't get, it makes no sense that some people before 2001 have unlimited and some held to 35. So I think that, you know, the intent of that was to sort of phase it in to some extent. And
Well, my interpretation is they grandfathered the setbacks. Because in between 90,000 and 2001, there was a 35-foot setback. That's how the rules were in the zoning. So what they did was they grandfathered the lots that were approved for subdivision between that time. So they still had their setbacks. The ones pre-97, there was no intent to do anything about the buffers or setbacks because those lots were approved without buffers and setbacks. And then in 2001, they wanted to impose it on lots that weren't developed. So that bit, like Jamie said, with the farmhouse, they looked at it like it doesn't matter. I mean, the guy, when he broke off his house was already there. So he doesn't need that buffer to build on. So, but they did like a half grandfathering, which is kind of really strange. It was, I don't care. You can put you can put the buffers on all of them, but you got to make both of those clear because I got to enforce this. And the way it's written now, I'm helter-skelter left in the middle of nowhere's land. That was the whole reason why this got brought forward. I'm the one that's got to enforce it. So it's got to be black and white. That's the point I'm trying to get to.
gotta be defensible. Understandable and defensible.
And right now, they're in conflict with each other, especially the way that you're interpreting it now, to want it to be. So if you're gonna change them, you gotta change both of them so that it's black and white. This is how we apply it.
Well,
All right, let's change both of them.
as I said, when they gave the exemption to all unimproved lots, I wouldn't have done that. So I'm trying to find a middle ground. They didn't want to do it because they didn't want to make lots unbuildable. I would have voted against that. So am I okay with between, 1997 and 2001 going to 35 to like phase it in? I think I probably could live with that. But I think houses that are lots of record before 2001 to just be able to go into the wetlands buffer, without any regulation at all.
But what'll happen is because of the way that thing is, a lot created in 1996 would have a buffer. The one created in 97 and 98 wouldn't have it. That's the point I'm trying to make. So
You can undo both of those though, Ron.
yeah, you could change
So
them. I don't care how you do it.
Like you were saying, if I had a seat at the table then, I wouldn't agree with it. You can undo that now and make it apply to any lot that you want. And I think, and from my perspective, maybe even more so than John's, I think it just needs to be clear. Because I think as it's written now, it's a little bit unclear. I think John has John and his predecessors have applied it in the most appropriate way based on how it's written. But if we change it, I think it needs to be very clear. And if there's conflicts, it needs to be ruled up. But however this board feels right now, you can propose anything that you want, the majority of this board, and put it to voters. And that could include putting buffers on every lot regardless of when it was created.
Which would make it really easy for me. It's black and white then.
I mean, maybe I'd stick with the 35 before 2001 or something like that, but I don't think you get to have this exemption forever. I mean, the wetlands buffers are going to protect wetlands. If we're going to protect wetlands, we should protect wetlands. I mean, it shouldn't be, if your lot was created years ago, you can despoil the environment.
But that's an assumption that you're spoiling the environment, I think.
I think that's a
Well, you have
de
the, you have
facto
the, you have the
de facto
possibility to,
assumption.
Right here, Jamie, the
Assumptions.
Piscataqua Regional Estuaries Partnership. This is the UNH scientists that the EPA contracted to write the document that recommended the 100-foot buffers.
Well, Steve, you made reference to that. I'll do a little bit of pushback here. I went back and researched how the EPA, USDA, and others, Department of Agriculture, they looked at this, how this all got started with buffers and protection of wetlands. There's certainly plenty of scientific evidence to support buffers, in particular around industrial sites and agricultural lands, because they're washing chemicals and other substances into the waterways. There's certainly a bigger concern about primary wetlands and actual bodies of water than there are in small creeks or, just wet areas. So I'm not necessarily in favor of increasing the 50 feet around residences. If we wanted to go with something, increase the buffers around, the river or.
We do. We have a 100-foot prime wetland buffer already in place.
So we've already got that in place. So You know, I just, and by the way, the state's been wrestling this for 2 years about putting out a buffer guideline, and they can't come to a conclusion
The state
as to what it
doesn't buy buffers
is.
at all.
So, you know, I debate whether it's as clear cut as you're trying to make it out to be.
It is tricky because you can't have a scientist come out to assess the functions and values of every single location. So you have to make sort of a broad rule that is sweeping. That's the only
Right.
way to really look at it.
And so where do you draw the limit on the one size fits all rule? And you know, so, and I think that's open for debate, and it depends
Sure.
on the circumstances. You gotta, you know, this isn't Kansas, Nebraska, where you've got these large agricultural operations that are going on that are dumping tons of chemicals, you know, on a monthly basis into the environment. You know, you got to look at what's the environment that we're operating on, which is basically a residential area with, you know, a few areas of which we have relatively minor industrial development. So.
In Barrington's
This
regulations
is-
with jurisdictional wetlands of 50 feet and the primes are 100, I think. The prime wetland basically has running water, which could carry contaminants where the other ones
Right.
don't. And I think that's the reason why you got a different buffer on those.
What was that, Steve?
So can we
it's-
get back to what are we doing? with
Steve
this
had one
article?
thought.
Yeah, so quickly, it's estuaries partnership. So part of what happens here in Barrington even is impacting Great Bay. So that is part of the concerns that they're looking at. It's more of a long distance nutrient loading concern, but we can move on to other stuff.
All right, so changes or agreed wording on 9515.
I think
Can we,
wording is, I don't think we philosophically have a concept yet, so wording is going to be tough. To me, I think as a compromise, I'm good for 35 feet above, before 2001, and then 50 after.
I propose changing it to just adding on lots where we started the conversation earlier on to
Right.
how it's written now, and maybe wrestle with restrictions next time.
I'm all for that. Leave
Unless
it-
there's,
leave it-
That will give you another year to get
Yeah.
into the nitty gritty on.
Like John was saying too, the 35 feet is a setback and the 50 feet is,
Yeah,
So
you
they're
you deal with them differently. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I have to because of the way the regulations are written.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it defines a setback, it defines a buffer, and then it defines what an approved lot is too in our regulations.
So back up, what do you suggest, Jamie? We leave it or go forward, or what do we?
951 parents 5, the way it's written now. Earlier on, we had talked, and Jeff and I both just put a note in there to add on lots after planning board or on lots which otherwise legally existed. It clarified for John for enforcement, but didn't really change much. So it's kind of kicking the can down the road, but it gives them a little bit of clarity as far as
Okay.
how to
It
enforce.
doesn't change at all how I've been enforcing it. It just makes it clearer of an interpretation
but-
to others.
Now, after all of this discussion, just to make it clear that the unimproved applies to the two words we're adding, I would make it or on unimproved lots which otherwise legally existed. It's implied by the first that says unimproved lots that were approved by the subdivision or lots which otherwise legally existed, but just to make sure.
But that changes the current practice.
Yes, it does, because now it means any lot that's improved would now have that buffer. So if that lot was created before subdivision and you put it on any lot that's improved, if there's a house on it, it's an approved lot. So therefore, the buffers would apply no matter what. There would be no,
You're not doing that currently.
correct. I do it based on the time of subdivision because it says unimproved at time of subdivision.
Okay.
So you could take the time of subdivision out and it would just apply to all lots. But even Ron was saying we probably should give the relief to the lots that
All right,
were.
then I'm all for, we'll just insert on lots
Yeah.
and leave it for this year. So board can come back to it next year.
Can someone read what it's gonna say
So-
so Carol can get it?
Right, so 9515, that section, subsection will read exactly the same, except for two words. So it'll read, this ordinance shall not prohibit construction of principal and accessory structures within the buffer zone on unimproved lots that were approved for subdivision by the planning board or on lots, that's the two inserted words, which otherwise legally existed on or before March 13, 2001.
Okay, thank you.
And so the effect of this change will be what exactly, Jeff?
Essentially, it's not going to change anything for now.
Just gonna make it clearer.
Because it's becoming apparent that we're not going to agree to the wording as a board.
Yeah, but it kind of clarifies existing practice, but I don't agree.
Right, it does clarify the existing practice.
It solidifies as existing practice, but I don't agree with. That's the problem.
Well, if we're not really going to change it, and it doesn't really change anything, how about we just not change it?
Because every 5 years it comes back up and the guy's telling the town administrator and the select board that I should be fired because I don't interpret the code the way he does. That's the reason why I brought it back in to be changed. I've had enough. This is just total bull. And let's just end it and make the thing clear. I don't care if you met buffers on every single lot in town. Just make it black and white so it can be defensible.
And I agree. I don't think it matters what the board does, but I think it needs to be clear because it's not fair to the property owners. It's not fair to the town. It's not fair to the building inspector to be applying a zoning ordinance that is, I believe that as it's written, there's ambiguity in how it's written. Now, I think it's being applied appropriately and as it's reasonably written in the intent at the time, but I think clearing up the current practice or changing it, as long as it's clear, is essential. I don't think you can do nothing. Or I would ask that you please don't do nothing.
Oh, okay, so Steve, to what you were saying, I think the thing is clarify it, but I frankly don't see the board coming to any near consensus on the wording to change it to address the concerns about buffers not existing on improved lots. And so that needs to be worked on, but I just don't see us getting there within the time constraints of when we need to submit the amendments for warrant. We got to have the public hearings.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess even with that change, it doesn't seem clear to me. It doesn't make anything clear to me. I don't see how it changes the way we do things going forward. If we're going to continue doing things the way they've always been done, these couple word changes, I don't see how it changes. Why are we bothering to make the change if it doesn't really change anything and it doesn't really make it clear?
I think we know exactly why. There's one person in town who incessantly comes back with this one issue about how this one specific article is not applied appropriately. And his opinion, and you know very well, you're intimate with the knowledge that he believes that it's being applied inappropriately. So we're trying to change that because it's not John's rule and John's not making up his rules. He's applying it the way it's written. So and you can disagree, and that's your, prerogative, and we all disagree on some stuff and not others. But Connor, John, and several others believe that by inserting on lots will dissuade the one person from always saying that he should be fired. So we're trying to address it because he takes an undue amount of flack because of the way this is written.
And Jamie,
it's a fact. It's not, if you believe that John's applying this inappropriately, and that's your opinion, with a few other people in town, but this is the whole point. We're trying to address this one thing is because someone keeps coming forward to take issue with it and take a personal issue with John. And we're trying to remove that personal issue with John and put it on the board, which you're a part of and you're responsible for too. So we need to take ownership of it, change it to something that's acceptable, and now allows this person to sleep at night and not bug John about how it's being applied poorly. Right?
You can't make everyone happy. One person has an opinion. If John's a public official, he can take a little heat. I think we should leave it the way it is.
I take the heat all the time. And that heat, and I want to make this statement now. That whole thing you did about having word for word and me in the minutes and kept trying to say that that's how I applied it lately, which was trying to put words that weren't in my mouth And even after Barbara went there and rewrote it, you still sent an email out telling her to change it to something I didn't say. So that word lately that was not in there that I didn't say, your buddy could take and twist it and go back to the selectmen and see, right here, Mr. Huckins is the one twisting this. He's only done it lately. That's what you're helping him do, and I've had enough of that. No one else had verbatim in those minutes. I shouldn't have had verbatim in those minutes either. This board needs to end this witch hunt on me and stop facilitating your and your buddy's witch hunt.
And if I could, I think it's important to keep in mind that even though appointed, volunteer appointed positions that you're all in, John, myself, Barbara, in our public service roles, nobody deserves personal attacks. And for somebody to make the illusion that personal attacks are okay because you're a public official is completely inappropriate. And I think it's important that this board and the community take a stand that that shouldn't be an acceptable approach to any disagreement about something that isn't personal for anybody. It's not personal for John. It's not personal for me. It's not personal for the board. So I would hope that the board as a whole take a stand against something.
Well, and I agree with that. So we need to depersonalize this whole thing right now. And going back to Steve's original question, if it doesn't change anything, why do we need to make a change at all? It's
To stop the
Please,
attacks.
just a second, John. So the question is that if we insert these two words, will that fix the problem that we've had in the past with interpretation of this particular subsection?
Can I explain why I think it does?
Okay.
I'd be interested in Steve's counterpoint because I know he said he doesn't think it does. For me, the reason I think as it's written now has ambiguity is because that or separates two parts of the sentence. And I think it's not unreasonable to interpret that the part before the or is unimproved lots. And so the issue that a resident or a couple of residents have is that they believe that unimproved lots is what the second part of the sentence after or is referring to.
And I can see how they interpret it.
And I can too. I don't think it was the original intent, and that's not how it's been applied historically. So I think it'd be tough to do a change of practice without a change in the zoning ordinance. So I think I know how it's been applied, and I, from my understanding, the intent at the time it was established is that the or was purposefully meant to separate the two parts of the sentence and refer back to just lots in general, not specifically unimproved lots. And the reason I think that is because when the article was originally written, that didn't say or, that said on. And this provision of the zoning ordinance was changed once, just very simply, to change that where it says or from on to or. And when you read it as on instead of or, I think it becomes clearer that the original intent was that it's defining lots, not unimproved lots. When you change it to or, there's ambiguity. So we're deep into the weeds, and I hope you could follow. But that's where, for me personally, I found the original intent and why I think adding on lots after the or makes it clear that what you're describing after the or is just lots, not unimproved lots.
Without getting into, this is just, I'm not arguing the point anymore, I'm arguing the structure. And if we're saying unimproved lots and then with the next or takes away unimproved lots, why do we have unimproved lots in there? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
We had discussed this at length before, and then that's where it came up with the corrections that were there before, where it changed it from unimproved lots just to buffer zone on lots that legally
We took out
existed.
unimproved, and I guess,
Right.
I'm not necessarily in favor of where we're going, but it seems to me the cleaner way is just take out unimproved, which seems to muddy the waters. If you want it on all lots, then just take out unimproved, which seems to make things unclear. That's where it gets unclear.
So that goes back to any lot created 2001 or before wouldn't have buffers if you take the unimproved section out.
I'm not in favor of, but if we're trying to clarify it, I think we just take out the unimproved.
I think the
Done.
reason that it's different is because with the unimproved in there, and even if the on lots was in there, where that would apply is those unimproved lots at the time of subdivision, or those unimproved lots after the time of subdivision that it would apply for, right? Because if you just removed unimproved, then it wouldn't apply everything back to 2001.
So anything pre-2001 would have no buffer you would have a setback between 97 and 2001. And whether there was a house there at the time of subdivision or not.
Which would be a change of practice, is the point I guess I'm trying to make. Which going back to.
Would actually make my job easier. I'd have to do a lot less research.
What matters to us is that there's something clear to enforce, and it's your job to decide what that should be, what it should be that's being enforced. I think you know clearly what's being enforced now. And so if you're okay continuing that practice until you can revisit it, please clarify the language and make that intent clear in the language or change it.
With the way it's written on the proposed, with this change practice, the way it's written, this one,
That new one, yes.
this change practice.
Right, because right now what it does is if, let's say it was a subdivision that was approved by the planning board in 1990, I go look at the plan. If there was a building there when it was approved, then the buffers apply. If there was no building, the buffers don't apply. 99% of the lots had no structure on them because you're only allowed one structure per lot, no matter what. So, and then any lot that was not approved by the planning board, you know, these grandfathered lots that when you used to draw lines on a piece of paper, recorded registry of deeds, those don't apply at all. Those have nothing on them. They don't have any setbacks or buffers on them. They can, like I said, I've had a couple in the last few years, they built right up to the edge of the wetlands because that's how our regulations read.
So I would suggest either we change it to add on lots, which is the suggested remedy for interpretation.
I just want to give Steve an opportunity. If you, do you think with the clarity that I added, does it make it clear that adding on lots solidifies current practice?
I see where you're coming from on that. I disagree on the intent of the original rule. I think the intent of the original rule was to make a temporary exemption for people who were caught in the lurch of the change of zoning, so they wouldn't be stuck in the middle of a project. So if we're getting about intent, that I think that was the intent, and it's still very confusing.
Right.
It's still
And
very
let's-
confusing to me what this means
I would
and
like-
how it will be used.
And let's address intent at some point, and we can go on forever. But if you understand the way it's been enforced currently and in the near past, a way that adding on lots does not change, would you agree that adding on lots does not change the way it's been
Enforced.
enforced, and it would perpetuate the same thing that you disagree with, which is understandable if you want to disagree with, but it doesn't change anything. But it clarifies and removes the argument of ambiguity.
I still find it completely unintelligible and ambiguous. Even with those two words added, it's a very strange. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I don't want to add those two words unless we're going to fix it in a way that I can follow and explain to other people.
I appreciate hearing that, because what I heard from Mr. Diamond is that he finds the zoning ordinance as it's written confusing. So maybe he could understand that the code enforcement officer's role in enforcing the zoning ordinance has to deal with that ambiguity, and we're forced to make decisions based on the words on paper. Not everybody has to agree with those decisions, but I appreciate the hearing that other people think that the language as it's written is ambiguous. Thank you.
Definitely.
So
I'd like to restate what I said before, though, because we went through this, almost ad nauseum before to get down to where the words we had, where we took out unimproved lots and approved for subdivision by the planning board and made it very simple and seemed like it was very black and white. And that worked for you at the time, right, John?
The way that it was drafted on that,
Draft.
yeah, that makes it black and white. There's no ambiguity at all. And it makes my job easier. I don't have to do research. I can just do the date of the subdivision. I haven't got to go any farther.
So why do we undo that? Proposing to undo the change that we made that worked last meeting.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and changing it now.
Well, I think the problem is some people have a problem with granting this exemption
At all.
at all. So I agree this clarifies the language. I'm in favor of clarifying the language. I think my problem, along with Steve's, is that I don't like the rule. But I can get over that. I can live with that. There's a lot of other rules I don't
And then isn't there a certain number of these lots that were in question? You said like probably 12 lots in town that,
The way, yeah, well, I wouldn't say 12. There's a handful because when,
you came up with a number last time, I don't recall.
yeah, I think I said maybe a dozen or so that come forward. Most of the existing farms, when they were subdivided, had these big barns out back and all these other outbuildings. They don't come in for, when they get building permits, it's to renovate their buildings and not expanding those buildings. So with that said, even if they're in the buffer, they're legally existing structures, so you're allowed to continue and maintain them. So there's very few that were small houses where they come in and want to add something on. I mean, that's why I'm saying there's probably a dozen or so that I've known of in the 20 years that I've been involved in the town.
Well, I think I agree with the chairman and the vice chairman that it's a big issue. Let's move forward with making progress so John doesn't get yelled at and deal with the other issue when we can deal with it.
I'm going to make a motion to move Amendment 10 as written on the changes forward to a vote, as it's written here. And we'll just see where that flies.
I second.
Motion by James Jennison, seconded by Ron Allard, Donna Masucci.
Excuse me.
What was the vote?
We're still,
Hold a minute.
give me a second.
Good one about her vote here or something.
So, could you repeat that again?
I am proposing to move this amendment forward as is written.
Okay,
Written-
before.
written. Correct.
Yes,
Jenny.
the, yay, whatever.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond nay.
Jeff Brand.
Brand name.
1, 2, 3, 4 to 2. The motion,
Wait, did you and?
I didn't vote.
I vote, in my head I did.
What did you think? What did you say? I voted.
Well, yay, because you seconded
Because I
it.
second doesn't mean I'm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got the
But I'm-
coughing thing through.
I'm sorry.
Ron Allard
I think I'm gonna, yes.
and James Jennison, aye. So 4 to 2 to move the amendment forward as written. All right.
I went the other way, 3-3.
Yeah.
We have to go in the park.
Yeah.
Fist fight.
Unfortunately, the vote has been taken.
Yes.
It's stand. We're moving on.
Oh,
See what the
thank
people
That's
say.
it.
All right. Amendment 11.
Well said, Jeff.
All right.
Yes.
On Amendment 11, it was for change the table 1 of uses that for, it started out as bed and breakfasts, that we were just going to make that conditional use permit in all zones because we had a discussion. A bed and breakfast, there's really no way to limit them, or there's no strict definition on their size. And so therefore we said it was appropriate. That somehow moved on to people wanted conditional use permits on drugstores in all zones.
Jamie did. Ron wanted bed. I
Right.
wanted the other 3.
Right, and so it's drugstores, gasoline service station, convenience stores with gas pumps.
Okay, so I guess,
So we'll
Okay, adding casinos now.
I don't think that's in our table of
I don't
uses.
think it's a daily user. So we'll vote on them one by one, as Ron requested, so his didn't get tied up in my lunacy. So,
So doing it one by one, you want these listed as 4 separate articles when it's
Correct.
time to vote?
yeah, Ron would like that, and I think that's reasonable. I think mine will pass and his will fail, but we're not betting. No casinos allowed. So going on bed and breakfasts, Amendment 11, moving bed and breakfasts to conditional use permit.
I make a motion, we move that forward to voting.
I second.
Ron Allard, second by Jeff Brand, Donna Masucci,
Aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Al and I.
Steve Diamond,
Diamond eye.
James Jennison, aye, Jeff Brand.
Brand I.
All right, so we are moving bed and breakfasts on. Drugstores, to move drugstores to conditional use permits. I'm going to make a motion to move that one forward.
Second.
Second by Buddy Hackett. Donna Masucci,
Aye.
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Nay.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Jeff Brand,
Nay.
James Jennison, aye.
4-2.
4 to 2. We'll move drugstores forward. Gasoline service stations. I will make a motion to move gasoline service stations forward to a vote.
Second.
Second by Buddy Hackett. Donna Masucci.
Nay,
Pardon me?
nay,
Donna wants gasoline service station. Buddy Hackett.
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard.
Nay.
Steve Diamond.
Diamond Eye.
Jeff Brand.
Brand nay.
James Jennison, aye. What's that?
Or three you lost, it doesn't go forward.
Well, there's only
That's fine.
6 people. There's 3-3. It fails.
3-3.
Yeah.
And it still fails.
3-3 still fails.
This is a fist fight.
Everybody wants gas stations. Convenience stores with gas pumps. James Jennison, I make a motion to move gas station, convenience stores with gas pumps forward to a vote.
Second.
Second by Buddy Hackett, Donna Masucci.
nay,
Buddy Hackett,
Hackett, aye.
Ron Allard,
Nay.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand nay.
James Jennison, aye. 3-3, I lose again.
You got your drugstores in.
I know, I had drugstores
I don't know. Of the three, if I had to vote
again.
for one.
You want-
Donna was a swing vote. We had to ask her.
Donna doesn't want drugstores, she wants more,
Well,
she
she was coughing.
wants more gas.
Well, you would think she needed a drugstore if she was coughing.
She needed cough drops. I don't know why she voted against drugstore. She's joking over there.
Now that she's
We can do a better
reoxygenated, we
gas
have to
pump.
take another vote.
Apparently.
All right, number 12, moving on, because I could lament that one, I don't understand, but, bed and breakfasts, more regulated than gas stations. Number 12, Barrington zone ordinance is proposed by the planning board to amend section 422, parents 3 by increasing the minimum lot size for multifamily housing in the village districts as follows. The minimum lot size for multifamily housing development shall be 80,000 square feet for the first dwelling unit. Each additional dwelling unit shall require 40,000 square feet of upland area per dwelling unit. The purpose of this amendment is to encourage more mixed-use commercial development in the village district by facilitating economies of scale that make it advantageous to a developer to include commercial uses. Motion to move that forward.
Are we still all locked on 40,000 square feet? Everyone likes that number?
No.
No?
I think we
It was agreeable though before.
I think we hammered that one out, and that's what we came up with, but if you want to propose a different number?
Well,
Trying to see where.
no, I understand. That's where everybody but me got to. I think it's too drastic of a change, and B, I'm not convinced it's gonna have the cause and effect you think it is. So,
I agree on both. I would have got to go something a little more, going from 10 to 40 is a lot. It's a big change.
Yeah.
I would have gone on something a little more,
if you go 20, you just increased it by 100%,
so
but
I know we got there at 40,000
Right.
square feet last time.
We-
I'm not gonna bail now, but that seems to me like a big jump.
38,
30,000 square feet.
38. 1,000.
38,000.
38,950. I think we came there because it was like an acre,
wow,
right?
you're
You know, that was
It's a building acre they
Big
got.
on cut-
building acre.
Right, right.
Um,
I wanted 25. I got beat up last time.
I don't
I
know
don't-
that.
Well,
Yeah,
I would have gone,
What's that, is everyone still like 40? If that's, they will roll 40.
I
40.
hear a lot of, what? You're 40?
40.
All right.
Who are you, Jamie?
I have little opinion on it. I'd have to rehash the whole argument.
You just want to be done.
No, I feel we came up with that and I was on board last time and I'd have to rehash the whole argument to understand why I'm not in favor of it now, or why something else.
And you can do that during your public hearing.
Yeah.
If you make any changes, you hold a second hearing. If you don't make any changes, you don't have to hold a second hearing. So there's still an opportunity to change it depending on who comes to the audience and other opinion you get.
we need to settle this. I mean, we're either
Yeah.
going forward with 40 or not, or the
No,
clock's
we're
gonna run
going,
out on us.
that's what he's saying. Go forward with 40
Yeah.
and then at the public hearing, if there's
Okay.
impetus or input to change, then we'll change it.
Another
then.
bite at the apple, so to speak.
Yeah, that wasn't an arbitrary number. We talked about it.
Yeah.
I think it was pretty
I'd like-
arbitrary.
Yeah, I think so
I think
too.
it,
I think it was pretty
I think we're
arbitrary.
getting tired.
It was an arbitrary number.
And we could throw another one out there. We could sit here and talk for an hour.
That was at 10 o'clock and everybody wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I rolled. Fatigue.
Yeah, you did.
I mean,
Jeff, you can make a motion?
kick it down the road, make a motion or change
Sure,
it.
I'll make a motion to move forward with Amendment 12, Article 2.
Second.
Motion by Jeff Grant, second by Ron Allard. Tucci?
Nay.
Nay. Buddy Hackett? Allard?
Done. I might, yay. Said yay, right, Donna?
That's what I said, nay.
Okay.
You're gonna yay it?
Took me by surprise.
You're a yay? Just trying to help you out. Diamond?
All right,
Jeff Brand?
Brand nay.
James Jennison, aye. So we got 4-2. Moving forward. All right, that's it on those.
Oh, you already take the other one?
Yeah.
All right. I was looking,
Anything
that's
else?
probably why I saw the other. What did you have to roll up with
Anything
that?
else to discuss?
I would,
Carol, anything to add?
No, other than I have the public hearing notice ready. I have to just make a few tweaks to it tonight following this meeting, so I'll get that out to Barbara. You'll be all set for the 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, if there's no other comments, make a motion to adjourn until.
December 7th?
The 7th, you got your red,
Okay.
Karen.
Is,
September 7th.
yep, December 7th.
I second.
All right, Donna Masucci,
Yay.
Buddy Hackett,
Second, aye.
Ron Allard, Steve Diamond,
Diamond Eye?
and
Brand aye.
James Jennison, I. See you in a week. Thank you all.
Night, everyone.
Night. And you got